Welcome to Seoul International Conference on Urban Agriculture 2020. I'm Professor Kim Won-soon of Environment and Horticulture at University of Seoul. We're going to begin the Seoul International Conference on Urban Agriculture now. The conference began in 2012, and we have continued our discussions on global urban farming practices and development directions. Up until last year, the event was organized as part of Seoul Urban Agriculture Fair, but this year it became a separate event. I hope that this will lead to strengthening the global urban farmer network. This year's conference is taking place for 2 days, on the 26th and 27th of November. We will have discussions on the role of urban farming as a way to respond to climate change, and as an alternative way of farming that is sustainable amid crises like COVID-19 pandemic. This year we will begin today's event. Today we will begin the event with the opening remarks by Mr. Jung-hyup, acting mayor of Seoul, welcoming remarks by Chang-Woo, chairperson of the organizing committee, and congratulatory remarks by Mr. Maekawa, of mayor of Nerima City. We will watch a video on the participants' congratulatory messages, then move into the main session. Now let us watch a promotion.
도시농업이란 흩어져 있는 도시의 유휴 토지나 건물의 옥상, 아파트의 베란다, 학교, 공장, 시설, 동네의 공원 등을 이용해서 도시 공동체 구성원들의 자발적인 참여를 통하여 농작물을 생산하고 유통하며 소비하는 과정의 사회적 협력 활동을 말합니다. 우리나라는 2011년에 제정된 도시농업의 육성 및 지원에 대한 법률의 시행으로 더욱 활발해지고 있습니다. 도시농업의 의미는 도시민들에게 농촌을 알리고 농업이 갖는 생물 다양성 보전, 도시와 농업의 지속 가능한 발전을 만들어내고자 하는 데 의미가 있습니다. 농업이 도시를 만나면서 그 역할이 커졌는데요. 도시에서 농사활동을 통해 먹고 보고 즐기는 것으로서 몸과 마음의 건강과 행복을 꾀하는 것은 어떨까요?
Acting Seoul Mayor Jung-hyup has kindly sent us an opening messages.
Distinguished participants of the 2020 Seoul Urban Agriculture International Conference, I'm Jung-hyup So, the acting mayor of Seoul. It is my great pleasure to welcome all of the participating citizens of Seoul. I would also like to extend a welcome to the guest speakers from 9 different countries around the world, including the US, Canada, the UK, France, and Japan, who will share their insight on the present and future of urban agriculture. I would also like to welcome everyone who is participating online as well. The unprecedented COVID-19 pandemic is raising awareness about other global threats, such as climate change. And this, in turn, is presenting a timely opportunity for urban agriculture. That is because urban agriculture is not only a future industry that will contribute to carbon neutrality and biodiversity, but also a strong foundation on which a sustainable food supply system will be established in the post-COVID-19 era. So the theme of this conference, Climate Farmers Who Protect the Earth and Cities, is a very well-timed agenda that requires much attention. Everyone participating in this conference is a climate farmer. The Seoul Metropolitan Government already designated the year 2012 as the year of urban agriculture and have familiarized urban agriculture in the daily lives of the citizens. Since then, 8 years have passed, and now more than 640,000 urban farmers are active in the city, making the city much more vibrant than before. There is an old Korean saying that goes, "Farmers are the great foundation under the sun," which is why agriculture has been recognized as a fundamental industry, supporting the livelihood of mankind since the ancient times. I sincerely hope that this conference serves as a venue for the sharing of knowledge among people who are dreaming of becoming an urban farmer. I also hope that this conference can come up with breakthrough solutions in the current climate crisis era and become a catalyst for opening up a renaissance of urban agriculture. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, the Acting Mayor Jung-hyup, for your great opening remarks. Now I would like to invite Chang-Woo Lee, Seoul Urban Agriculture Conference Committee Chair. He's going to deliver his online welcome remarks.
(2020) 서울 도시농업 국제 컨퍼런스 추진위원회 위원장 이창호입니다. 코로나19로 전 세계가 큰 혼란에 빠져 있고 기후변화가 지구적 위기로 닥쳐오고 있는 가운데서도 온라인으로 2020 서울 도시농업 국제 컨퍼런스를 개최할 수 있게 되어 다행스럽게 생각합니다. 서울시에서 9번째로 열리는 도시농업 국제 컨퍼런스의 올해 주제는 도시와 지구를 살리는 기후농부입니다. 시적절한 주제를 다루는 이번 국제 컨퍼런스에는 총 10개국 21명의 연사가 참여합니다. 어려운 여건에서도 축사를 해주시고 사회와 자장을 맡아주시고 기조연설을 해주시며 발표와 토론을 해주시는 모든 참가자 여러분에게 깊은 감사의 말씀을 올리며 환영의 인사를 드립니다. 서울시는 2020년부터 이행하기 시작한 서울 도시농업 3.0 마스터 플랜의 비전을 100만 도시농부가 만드는 건강한 서울로 정했습니다. 도시농업 참여 농부를 위한 공간 확보, 함께 만들어 나가기 위한 참여 확대, 건강한 서울을 위한 사회적 가치 정전이라는 세 가지 추진 전략도 세웠습니다. 이러한 비전과 전략에 걸맞게 이번 국제 컨퍼런스를 계기로 하여 서울시 도시농부는 도시농업을 통하여 기후변화 위기를 극복하는 데 앞장서는 기후농부가 되고자 합니다. 이번 국제 컨퍼런스의 주제이기도 한 기후농부는 도시와 농촌에서 함께 어울려 농업을 실천하면서 탄소 중립에 기여하고 생물 다양성 증진에 앞장서고 지속가능한 먹거리 체계 구축을 위해 활동하는 모든 사람을 의미합니다. 이번 컨퍼런스의 기조연설이나 여러 세션의 주제 발표를 들어보면 아시겠지만 사실 도시농업의 거의 모든 영역이 기후변화와 밀접하게 연계되어 있음을 더욱 분명하게 이해할 수 있게 될 것입니다. 도시와 지구를 살리는 기후농부라는 주제로 11월 26일에 열리는 프리컨퍼런스에서는 세부 주제를 다룹니다. 제1세션은 탄소 중립, 제2세션은 생물 다양성, 제3세션은 지속가능한 먹거리 체계라는 세부 주제로 발표와 토론이 있습니다. 11월 27일에 열리는 메인 컨퍼런스에서는 기조연설, 주제발표, 종합토론이 이어집니다. 코로나19라는 전 세계적 위기 상황에서 여건이 여의치 않음에도 불구하고 소중한 말씀을 동영상으로 제작해 주시고 직접 발표하고 토론해 주시는 모든 연사분들께 다시 한번 깊은 감사의 말씀을 드립니다. 온라인 중심으로 진행하는 2020 서울 도시농업 국제 컨퍼런스는 세계 여러 나라와 지역의 도시농부를 포함하여 도시농업에 관심이 있는 분은 모두 참여할 수 있습니다. 언제든 유튜브에 들어오셔서 전 세계 기후농부와 전문가의 경험과 지식을 듣고 공감해 주시기를 바란다는 말씀을 드리면서 제 환영사를 마치고자 합니다. 감사합니다.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lee, for your remarks. Now, I would like to invite Akio Maekawa, Tokyo Nerima City Mayor, for his congratulatory remarks.
I am Maekawa Akio, the Mayor of Nerima City, Tokyo. Congratulations on holding the 2020 Seoul International Conference on Urban Agriculture. It's my pleasure to have the opportunity to express my congratulations today. I can't believe how fast time goes by. It's already been 1 year since the Urban Agriculture World Summit was held in Nerima City. The event was very successful, and I'd like to thank you everyone who participated from Seoul and our colleagues from Jakarta, London, New York, and Toronto. The important achievement was obtained at the end of the event was the fact we confirmed the universal importance of urban agriculture, irrespective of history and culture. Concerning the COVID-19 pandemic, we believe the appeal of urban agriculture will increase in the future. Finally, we'd like to wish you good luck and success on this conference. Hopefully, this will be an opportunity for us to deepen the relationship between Seoul and Nerima. We are looking forward to having many more successful conferences in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mayor Akio Maekawa, for your excellent remarks. Now, let's watch a short video clip made by urban agriculture activists and civic groups to celebrate the opening of the 2020 Seoul International Conference on Urban. Many congratulatory messages by so many people truly lighten up this conference. Thank you very much. Now we are going to listen to a keynote speech. The first keynote speech will be about agricultural biodiversity and social urban agriculture is the Professor Oh Chung-hyun of Bioenvironmental Sciences at Dongguk University. Due to COVID-19, he couldn't be here today, and instead he sent a video clip of his lecture. Please welcome him with a big round of applause.
Hello everyone. I'm Oh Chung-hyun, Professor of Bioenvironmental Studies at Dongguk University. It is my great pleasure to be invited to make a keynote speech for Seoul International Conference on Urban Agriculture. The topic of my presentation today is agricultural biodiversity and social urban agriculture. Let me first talk about biodiversity and ecosystem services. After industrialization, we've witnessed significant reduction in biodiversity as well as deterioration of ecosystem services. In the field of agriculture as well, we've seen reduction of agricultural biodiversity. Agriculture biodiversity is the main cause, or reduction of such is main cause of global agricultural biodiversity reduction. FAO has launched what's called the globally important agricultural heritage systems. Through these systems, it is making efforts to preserve biodiversity in traditional agriculture with participation of many countries around the world. You're looking at a picture on your right side. This is Korea's #1 agricultural biodiversity. It is a sectioned rice field in Wando, Jeonnam Province. There are many reasons of reduction of agricultural biodiversity, including industrialization and modernization of agriculture. In the process of those two, we've lost many of the agricultural biological diversity as well as traditional agricultural heritage and resources. In Korea, we've seen significant increase in urban population as well as decrease in agriculture or rural population. 90% of Korean population is residing in urban areas. At the same time, more than 15% of the total population is living in the Seoul Metropolitan area. The concentration of population is another reason of the reduction of the agricultural biodiversity. You're looking at some of the Korea's agricultural biodiversity resources that are disappearing, including frogs, swallows, and locusts. You're also looking at Korea's traditional agricultural heritage. You're looking at the carrier on your left, and you're also looking at the scarecrow that used to be important assets or heritage of Korean agriculture. Under the circumstances, urban farming can give us new hope of agricultural biodiversity. Through urban farming, we can conserve traditional seeds, we can operate seed library. Also, urban farmers can participate in various activities. There is also environmental education and education on biodiversity, all of which gives hope for a better future of urban farming. At the same time, urban farming can solve our social problems, such as aging society, income gap between the haves and have-nots, and problems related to the disabled people and youth. And likewise, by linking biodiversity and social urban farming, we can find new solutions for environmental and social problems. Care, education, healing are 3 objectives of urban farming and can be achieved by our urban farming efforts. We also need continued government support and efforts. With that, I'll finish up my presentation. Thank you very much for your listening. I hope that you will stay healthy amid the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. I also hope the conference will be a successful one. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. He talked about the reduction of agricultural biodiversity from the industrialization, and he also highlighted the values of social urban agriculture. Thank you very much for your excellent keynote speech. The next keynote speaker is somebody who's been engaged in urban agriculture for 42 years since 1978. He is the Michael Levenston City Farmer Society Executive.
Thank you so much for inviting me to speak, all the way from Canada. I'm standing in City Farmers' demonstration garden in Vancouver, British Columbia, where for over 40 years we've promoted urban agriculture. We've enjoyed meeting many Korean visitors here at the garden and talking with them about city farming. In Canada, like in the rest of the world, we are in COVID times. In this garden, we maintain a 2-meter distance. Everyone must wear a mask, and we only allow one family at a time to visit. Unfortunately, at this time, large tours and classes of students are not allowed. Over the years, our tiny nonprofit society has watched many different urban agriculture stories become headlines. For example, we have been questioned about growing food locally, garden pesticides, energy use in the food system, nutrition, school gardens, agriculture on roofs, and composting as a solid waste strategy. This year, COVID and urban agriculture are linked in the news. Here in Vancouver, we have experienced lockdowns, unemployment, closed music festivals, and sporting events. People are at home, and many are discovering the joys of food gardening. They produce food in their gardens, on balconies, or in community gardens. 51% of Canadians grow at least one type of fruit and vegetable. Almost 70% of new gardeners this year said that the pandemic influenced their decision to grow their own food. These new gardeners visit us here to ask us questions on how to grow food. Residents also come to buy city-subsidized compost bins. The City of Vancouver funds us to teach composting. At the beginning of the pandemic, people rushed to buy toilet paper. I don't know why. Then another headline appeared. Seeds are the new toilet paper. People were rushing to start a garden this spring. Our local seed company has seen a 3 times increase in business over last year. And now, in November, they're seeing people buying seeds for next year because gardeners are afraid that there won't be any seeds for them to plant next spring. City Farmer has published news about urban agriculture since we began work in 1978, 43 years ago. We moved away from paper publications in 1994 and started City Farmer News on the internet. Today, we link to stories from around the world 7 days a week. This year, COVID is moving urban agriculture into the spotlight. Politicians are looking at city farming and creating policy, both at a national and municipal level. Some support urban gardens to help unemployed families meet their daily nutrition. Some say they want to address the country's food security concerns, and others speak of the potential risk of disruption to their food supply. One of the most exciting stories comes from Korea, your country. Last month, this headline came out in English on the Yonhap news agency. Seoul City aims to nurture 1 million urban farmers by 2024. The city plans to invest $216 million to expand patches of land for farming, teach farming skills, and building communities of urban farmers. This is historic and shows that your city is leading the world. The Philippines has also been extremely active. A government minister just filed a bill seeking to promote urban agriculture in all metropolitan areas nationwide to address the country's food security concerns. The Philippines Agriculture Secretary also discussed the establishment of a national urban agriculture research and learning center. They even chose a beauty contest winner, Miss Philippines Earth 2020. She has her own garden and said, "I chose urban agriculture as an advocacy because it helps in achieving food production and gives a sense of security to a person who is able to feed his or her family, especially in these trying times." In Malaysia, the Agriculture and Food Minister is allocating RM 10 million to an urban farming program which is expected to benefit 800 communities and 12,000 participants. In Singapore, 9 large commercial urban farms have been offered a total of $40 million by the Singapore Food Agency. Singapore has also started a project called Gardening with Edibles, which involves distributing free seed packets to encourage people to grow produce at home. In my country, Canada, 2 cities, Victoria and Vancouver, at the beginning of the pandemic, used their municipal greenhouses to help urban farmers. One city grew and distributed 75,000 vegetable seedlings. The other grew vegetables and herbs, which they harvested and gave to needy residents. These new policies, which appear in the news, are unlike anything we've seen since World War II, when Western countries initiated victory gardens to supplement rations, but also to boost morale. COVID and concern for people's food needs and morale are driving this change today. Governments are looking at unemployment, business failures, debt, and food supply concerns. They see people are suffering. We know that urban farming raises people's spirits. Working with the soil is a tonic for us all. So, it is time for all countries in the world to create national strategies to help urban agriculture grow. City farmers like us must guide our politicians so they can put the right policies in place. We should not exaggerate the amount of food that can be grown, but emphasize the true worth of many people growing some of their own food. Our goal as good citizens is to improve the lives of all our people. We want everyone to have medical coverage and financial support when they're unemployed. Urban farming should also be on this list of essential strategies. Your ideas are valuable as we build national strategies. Our governments can help. COVID is changing the world now and will into the future. Urban agriculture is one of the solutions. We must all contribute to changing the future for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation. So we're losing our seeds that can be planted in our urban farming spaces, and there's a growing concerns on food security. Also, he talked about what was covered in media about Korea, and Seoul City has a plan of nurturing 1 million urban farmers. Urban farming in the era of COVID-19 is not a merely hobby. It should be regarded as an important strategy for municipalities and the nation. Once again, thank you very much for your presentation, Mr. Levenston. Now let us move on to the main presentation session. The first speaker is Mr. Jung-hyup, Seoul Metropolitan City Council member. He has kindly come to the event venue. He's going to talk about how we can promote social farming in the city of Seoul. Good afternoon. I'm Jung-hyup, Seoul Metropolitan City Council member in the Committee of Economic and Planning. I'm also an urban farmer. I've been growing vegetables for the past 12 years. Today, I'm going to talk about the Seoul City government's promotion plan of social farming as a response to climate change. I understand that we have a common question. Why do we need farming in urban areas? I'm not sure whether you understand. On Earth, there are so many kinds of different living things. We are living together. All the living things are living together, sharing the space on Earth, except for only one thing. As you can guess, that living thing, or the living creature, is human beings. In the life system of the Earth, human beings are the only ones that's destroying the Earth. And the most important activity that human beings can do to save the Earth is to farm and to plant trees. Farming is not just an industry to produce food, but it should be an activity that all of us are engaged to save the Earth. In that regard, Seoul Metro City government, of course, understands the importance of urban farming. Therefore, it should implement initiatives and Seoul citizens should participate in these related activities. For all of us to introduce to you the concept of social farming, I'll also talk about similar concepts such as urban farming and care farming. I will also highlight the necessity of urban social farming. And I will also introduce to you how participation of urban farming can change people's perception. And I will introduce to you the related ordinances and laws. If you want to be engaged in social urban farming, it is critical that both the public and the private participate. The role of the public sector is to create relevant rules and regulations. So for the city government, it is about establishing city ordinances, and municipalities can make investment so that the urban farming activities can be spread. That's why we need to have ordinances. Recently, in the city of Seoul, social farming related ordinances have been established. In the city of Seoul, 4 out of 10 Seoul citizens are categorized as the disadvantages, and urban farming can provide jobs to them. And by participating in urban farming, there has been an act enacted by the Korean National Assembly. It was enacted in March this year. It will go into effect in March next year. So we have the law and we now have the city ordinance. Then Seoul citizens and people of Korea can be engaged in social urban farming and enjoy the benefits of urban farming. Under the circumstances, I believe that this conference is very meaningful. In 2017, I published a paper at Seoul University of Seoul. It was a study about the participation of urban farming and people change of perception. In Gangdong district from 2010 and 2015, I conducted a survey on those people who participated in urban farming, and I looked at 3 different aspects. I wanted to first understand whether their perception on the environment has changed after their participation, whether their perception on food and health has changed. I also wanted to understand whether there has been a perception change. So I conducted cross-analysis on the 5-year participation on urban farming. Depending on the number of participation or the frequency of participation, I was able to see improvement of the participants' understanding on the environment. Their perception of environment has changed, and they developed greater interest in the environment. Also about food security and safety and health, the perception on those elements also changed with increasing number of participation. To promote people's participation on urban farming, the sense of community and understanding on food security and health have been highlighted by the Seoul Metropolitan City government in order to provide such institutional support. Then what do we have to do next year? There will be many initiatives and efforts made by related authorities of the Seoul City government. I'm in a position to deliberate Seoul City government budget, and there are many initiatives planned for urban farming. Next year, the city of Seoul, as is discussed at the National Assembly level, there's going to be city government initiative on establishing pilot care farms, and there will be budget allocated for that end, and we're going to have cooperation with Farmers Association to launch care farming in the city of Seoul. One of the advantage of urban farming is to provide care, and participants can be more actively engaged in our community. And by engaging in farming activities, we can also improve our stewardship of our environment and the earth. I hope that these initiatives will be also participated by citizens of other municipalities and people of Korea. Thank you very much for your presentation. Seoul Metropolitan City Council member Oh Chung-hyun, I understand you're a quite busy person, but he has kindly visited the conference to highlight the importance of urban farming. He's the one who made a significant contribution to creating the relevant city ordinance. So once again, thank you very much for your contribution. Please once again give him a big round of applause. Now let us move on to the second presentation. The second speaker is Ms. Cecilia Marocchino, Urban Food Agency coordinator from Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations. She's going to talk about the FAO Urban Food Agenda, building sustainable and inclusive urban food systems.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, colleagues. First of all, allow me to say that I am extremely delighted to be with all of you and be part of the discussion at the Seoul International Conference on Urban Agriculture. I would like to start the presentation with some key facts related to urbanization. There are currently more than 7 billion mouths to feed on the planet, and they keep growing. Today, 50% of the world population reside in urban areas, and not just in megacities, but even more importantly, in small and intermediary cities. By 2050, the urban population is expected to reach 68%, and over 90% of this increase will occur especially in Africa and Asia. And I would like to highlight that according to FAO, 70% of the total food production is consumed in urban area, which means that making food systems in urban area more sustainable will have positive reverberations throughout the food system and will influence production pattern. Therefore, I think it is extremely important to introduce the urban and peri-urban agriculture in the global context of urbanization, climate change, and depletion of national resources, considering the running out of good productive land, soil, water, and biodiversity. And moreover, we cannot avoid to mention the most recent COVID-19 pandemic, which is affecting the entire food system worldwide. In such a context, we really need to address the complexity and the interrelated challenges related to urbanization through a systemic and an integrated approach. This is my first key message. The second point is related to the importance of the local government, the key role that local government are playing in promoting sustainable urban food system transformation. And I want to refer to a recent survey, an FAO survey on urban food system and COVID-19 launched in April 2020. We have collected 861 responses from 77 countries, 57% of which were members of the local government. According to the result of the survey, 90% of cities have taken at least one measure to ensure food access to vulnerable people. Local government during the COVID-19 pandemic have done really a lot, and in most of the cases without access to additional funds. So the second key message here is that dealing with COVID-19 revealed a great potential of local government in addressing urban food system challenges. You can find all the results of this survey I was referring to in the policy brief, Cities and Local Government at the Forefront in Building Inclusive and Resilient Food System, published in July 2021 and included in the FAO COVID-19 webpage. And I go directly to the focus, the importance of shifting from a sectorial approach to a food system approach, and the importance of food system sustainability considering the three dimensions of the sustainability: economic, social, and environmental dimension. Economic dimension, the activity should generate benefits for all categories of stakeholders. Social sustainability, that there is equity in the distribution of the economic value added, taking into account particularly the most vulnerable group. And the third point on natural environment, environmental sustainability, taking consideration biodiversity, water, soil, animal and plant health, the carbon footprint, the water footprint, and food losses and waste. The holistic vision comes, of course, with potential synergy between all the dimensions of food system and the trade-off. Why taking a sustainable food system approach? Because basically direct intervention in one area of the food system risk creating or exacerbating problem in another area. Therefore, a system-wide view is essential. Silo thinking will exacerbate rather than address food system challenge. A food system approach considers the food system in its totality, taking into account all the elements of the food system and its relationship and related effects. Therefore, the third key message here is that dealing with urban areas revealed the importance of shifting from a silo thinking to a food system approach. In line with this principle, I want to introduce the FAO framework for the Urban Food Agenda launched in 2019 that promote the food system approach and aims at addressing some of the key challenges faced by urban food systems. The FAO framework for the Urban Food Agenda is based on 4 guiding principles: rural-urban synergies, space matter, social inclusion and equity, resilience and sustainability, and food system interconnection. And I want just to highlight this last one, recognizing that food systems coexist with multiple systems and that food security and nutrition objectives should not be addressed in isolation. The Urban Food Agenda includes an urban food action program that is delivered through what we call 7 comprehensive areas of support, the CAS. The CAS together form an approach in which FAO with partner assists government on creating an enabling environment, executing action, and expanding. Creating an enabling environment means supporting local and national government in mainstreaming urban food system in planning, policy, and action at local and national level, CAS 1 and CAS 2. The second point is executing action using different entry points. So we shift from a sectorial approach to a systemic one using different entry points that are decided according to context-specific reality. Entry point could be short supply chain, urban agriculture and public food procurement, agri-food enterprises, food environment, access to nutritious food, and waste reduction and management, including through circular economy. The third line is expanding good practices through the exchange of experience among cities and improving capacities for scaling up actions. In all the projects, just to mention, we have different entry points, as I mentioned before, and for instance, in cities like Lima, Quito, Medellin, in Latin America, Colombo in Asia, Quito, Antananarivo, Kigali, Nairobi, Kisumu, and Lusaka in Africa, in all these cities, urban agriculture and short supply chain have been identified at local level as the entry point for starting shifting from the sectorial approach to a more holistic one. For example, in Nairobi, when we start mainstreaming food system into local planning and action, the municipality used as an entry point an Urban Agriculture Act. And today, after multi-stakeholder consultation process and after many discussions, we have moved from an Urban Agriculture Act to a development of a food system holistic and integrated strategy. In all the project, FAO is supporting cities in analyzing food system gap, establishing food governance mechanisms like the Food Policy Council, and developing holistic food strategy and action plan. And I want also to refer to another important strategy, part of the FAO Urban Food Agenda, that is the city-to-city exchange, which include the South-Southern triangular cooperation. Some examples are exchange on urban agriculture between Dakar, Douala, and Praia, exchange on the development of the food strategy and the establishment of the food governance mechanism between Nairobi and Toronto, and then also the last one just started between Milan, Nairobi, and Kigali on food waste management. In all the project, the core activity is the establishment of a governance mechanism which supports cities in connecting various sectors, various stakeholders, and therefore implementing the systemic approach. And I would like just to refer that in relation to urban agriculture, the benefits goes most beyond the production. So I want just to refer to the rooftop farming in Bangkok with all the benefits related to not only to production but also to the establishment of a learning center for visitors and students, benefits related to the renewable energy from solar panels, to the reduction of heat inside the building and so on. And before concluding, I would also to refer to a key initiative which FAO has recently launched, the Green Cities Initiative, which aims to increase people's well-being through better availability and access to products and services provided by sustainable food system and green spaces, including urban and peri-urban forestry and agriculture. The initiative again promotes the integrated and systemic approach between agriculture, food system, and urban forest, targeting small, intermediary, and metropolitan cities. I want just to conclude mentioning some key final remarks. Urban and peri-urban agriculture is a key and a fundamental entry point for start integrating food system in a local policy, planning, and action. What is important is that from the entry point, we move to a food system approach. The integration of urban and peri-urban agriculture in local policy is possible through different tools like public procurement, zoning regulation, public ordinance, and also addressing the land tenure issues. A key important element that I mentioned various times in this presentation is the importance of establishing a multi-stakeholder food governance mechanism that can act as an advisory board for the local government for mainstreaming food system into local policy planning and action. And examples of this multi-stakeholder food governance mechanism are many worldwide. We have many food policy council and we have many cities that are creating multi-stakeholder participatory platform for integrating food into the local agenda. And just to end, we need to consider that urban food system actions go beyond city boundaries. So it is extremely important that the local government and the local stakeholders take action for strengthening the urban-rural linkage and the vertical integration, the connection between national and local government. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your excellent presentation. There are 21 cities in Africa, and they are working together. It was very impressive. Even in UN, in terms of the urban food system, the urban agriculture is very important. That's the key takeaway messages that I got from her presentation. Now we are going to invite student Seung-yeon Han from Department of Design Engineering at Korea University of Technology and Education. Her presentation topic is current status of urban beekeeping and role of design engineering. Please welcome her. Good afternoon. I am a college student majoring in design engineering and a novice urban beekeeper who's been beekeeping for the past year. I am a designer and engineer who's constantly analyzing and creating something. In the process of designing, I've had a joy of creating something new. But looking at myself continuously printing plastic things out of the 3D printer, I became concerned about the environment, and I felt sorry and guilty for our planet. Against this backdrop, one of my professors in product design class suggested that we should design products involving things we like. For me, it was urban beekeeping. I've lived in Nowon district in Seoul for the past 20 years. When I was in high school, my grandma and I received a planter box under the Urban Agriculture Project, and we grew lettuce, tomatoes, and eggplants in our apartment's corridor for about 4 to 5 years. So, taking that opportunity, I got interested in urban agriculture and I looked up related materials and information. I came across urban bees, Seoul, and urban beekeeping, and I signed up for the beginner's course for urban beekeeping. Now I am a 1-year urban beekeeper. I am learning urban beekeeping practices at Urban Bee Seoul, which has so far trained 987 urban beekeepers operating 18 beekeeping sites in the city. Honeybees pollinate a third of crops across the world. Without honeybees, we will have less varieties of food crops. For this reason, in Europe, honeybees' economic status comes third, and domestically, the economic value of honeybees pollination is as big as 6 trillion won. However, despite such importance of bees, the world has seen the number of bees drop by 40% since 2006. And the Korean native bees population has plunged by 90% since 2010. For this reason, to promote the importance of bees and urban beekeeping, Urban Bee Seoul was launched. When you raise bees in the city, flowers bloom about 20% better, attracting insects and small birds, leading to the recovery of the urban ecosystem. It is such a virtuous cycle. Urban Bee Seoul is operating 18 bee farms and 5 sites for enjoying, watching, and experiencing honeybees. Looking at the flow chart of the urban beekeeping project by Urban Bee Seoul, it first starts with Bee 911 project to rescue bees to help reduce the workload of firefighters and give new life to urban bees. To help those bees live in the city, bee farms are created across the city, and there are begin again beekeepers. They are trained to become beekeepers at those sites. And they produce honey, and they are named after the name of the districts where the bee farms are located. And those honey are sold. And currently, there are 7 bee gardens. And Urban Bee Seoul has education project, distribution project, and environmental project. One of the education projects is my Sweet Life project, which offers beekeeping training courses. As of 2020, 987 people have completed courses since 2000, and many children had an opportunity to experience honeybees. Urban beekeepers who have completed beginners and practical courses can use the beekeeping site sharing service to raise bees and the farmers. And we also offer contract beekeeping services. You don't have to directly get involved in beekeeping. Someone else will grow beehives and harvest honey and send it to you. As I briefly mentioned, Begin Again educates socially vulnerable people on beekeeping techniques and help them work as managers at Urban Bee Seoul's bee farms. Currently, 11 people are in the 2nd year for beekeeping training, and in their 3rd year, they will pair up in a 2-person team and be dispatched to 12 bee farms in the city. One bee farm produces 150 kilograms of honey, generating an income of 3 million won. So 12 bee farms can make 36 million won in income. Urban Bee Seoul purchases honey produced like this and market them. So my Sweet Life project gets expanded to my Sweet City Life. The honey produced from the 18 bee farms are labeled as Seoul honey and Malang honey before sales. So Seoul honey received the Seoul Design Award. And Malang honey is a honey jello sticks, and they are currently for sales at international airports like Gimpo Airport. And we have contract beekeeping services, and our clients include 14 companies such as CJ Express and Amore Pacific. And honey produced from these sites are very safe honey, and it passed a test by the Seoul Research Institute of Public Health and Environment. We sell these honey products and invest the income in fostering honeybee gardens and forests. Currently, we have planted 19,000 trees at 7 sites. So my sweet city life gets expanded to my sweet plant project. So as I said earlier, the Bee 911 project is to lessen the beehive removal efforts by firefighters and create jobs for vulnerable people. When dispatched to remove beehives, some firefighters lose lives stung by bees, and also mistakes are sometimes made too. So for firefighters, removing beehives is very challenging. But the most frequent calls to 911 is to remove beehives. To address this issue, Urban Bees Seoul invented a honeybee vacuum cleaner to help remove beehives. The honeybee vacuum sucks out bees through hoses and collects them safely in a net, and they are later transplanted into new beehive boxes. And those saved, rescued bees are managed by the urban beekeepers trained by Urban Bees Seoul. We have so many projects about urban beekeeping, but not many people know about this. I thought about the reasons from the perspective of designs. I thought beehive boxes and beekeeping tools were one of the reasons. Korea has uniformed beehive boxes, and I felt it a bit regrettable, so I decided to design appropriate beehive boxes for the actual practices of urban beekeeping. So I analyzed the problems of material and structure of beehive boxes, and I surveyed urban beekeepers, and I found that there were ergonomic issues like musculoskeletal conditions, various tasks involving internal inspection, and pest control issues. Based on my findings, I wrote a dissertation for a college student academic conference titled Directions and Concept to Improve Designs of Beehive Boxes for Urban Beekeeping. I will further develop my research, and I would like to develop and design beehive boxes which are practical for urban beekeeping. And also I would like to grow myself as an advanced urban beekeeper. I'm looking forward to seeing my designed beehive boxes used at urban bee farms. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much for your presentation. It was indeed impressive. Since she is studying design engineering, but she didn't introduce herself as a design engineering major, but introduced herself as a urban beekeeper. And from the perspective of urban design, of course, there are lots of beekeeping activities happening in urban setting. And it was a good opportunity for us to think about the value of urban beekeeping. So thank you very much for your wonderful presentation. Now let's move on to the last presentation of the main session. The speaker is Mr. Bjorn, CEO of Edible Garden City. The topic of the presentation is the emergence of new agriculture.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for this opportunity and time for me to share my approach. My name is Bjorn, and I'm a practicing urban farmer and a social change maker. I've designed and built over 250 edible gardens in Singapore over the last 8 years. Whilst my projects, which are mainly commercial in nature, I've seen food gardens having the ability to build communities and to address social issues within the city. I want to use this as a basis of changing the way our society works and how people engage with nature and the environment in a more cohesive way through food. I've based a lot of my practice on philosophies, on regenerative agriculture systems, and sustainable design techniques. The evolution of Goethe's scientific work had great influence on that of Rudolf Steiner and his theory of the living organism, an individual and a self-contained entity, with as much as is practically possible the needs of the various members of the farm organism being met from within the farm itself. The biodynamic farming movement gave rise to the later organic farming movement, further distilled down by Sir Albert Howard and Lady Eve Balfour, and in the later years brought to clear prominence by Rachel Carson's and the book on the Silent Spring. The history of the alternative farming movement was developed as a counter to the then growing industrialized farming systems, which were the main push for the massive growth of population in urban areas. Permaculture, an ecological design principle that placed attention on the system approach to designing productive landscapes. Permaculture can involve any number of several ecologically inspired practices, the design and development of systems. When we look at our food system, food sovereignty and the return of indigenous agricultural knowledge is really important in the urban context. But we have seen systems, neoliberal food systems like Singapore, largely controlled by state-owned mechanics and large institutions, and coupled with a very small and marginal agriculture industry where only 10% of our food is grown locally. This positioning is further enforced by state investment vehicles that focuses on food security and investment into big agriculture companies. Here you can see on the slide, this has happened in the last 2 years. These investments is one that is devoid of empowerment to the people on being able to take control and take charge of our food system. The mark of progress is presented in only one way today, and that is of technology, vertical growing, sensors, and automation are words that you hear a lot of. They are worshipped as a silver bullet to solve Singapore's looming food crisis. These local endemic species create unique biotypes for insects and wildlife. If we do not provide a medium for this knowledge to be kept, there's a chance that it may be all lost. The deglobalization and return of decentralized community food system can be seen as a method of bringing back indigenous and native food. This is a contrary to an industrialized and globalized food system that has seen farming dependent on the world market, which focuses on a series of monocrop and cash crops. Well, me included, as I was growing up in Singapore, taking our garden city for granted, the nature of authoritarian political system have filtered down into how people engage with the landscapes. As Singapore transitioned away from agriculture, its post-colonial government built a modern city on the foundation of urban greening. Initial efforts to green the urban spaces of the city-state began in the 1960s, with the Lee Kuan Yew administration implementing an aggressive tree planting campaign in the city center and on rural roadsides. In 1967, the government formally launched the Garden City program to improve urban greenery and public cleanliness. As envisioned by Mr. Lee, a beautiful, orderly landscape reflective of a disciplined population and a civilized country. The program's main motivation, however, was economic development, as the greening of the city-state was utilized as a strategy to attract foreign investment. This is a compendium of just 10% of what we have of compiling the knowledge of our pioneers. However, the stark difference is still very evident in how this foodscape has developed. To some and the untrained eyes, this may look like a mess of green littered with colors of blue and pink. To some, this is messy and unsightly. But to others, this has been seen as a standard of introducing diversity and productivity into the city center. The future foodscape space may be the signal of the relaxing of the city-state, a static control of the urban landscape. But at this point, these spaces are nonetheless entangled in static politics, and a mindset shift is required. My first approach will be to work in urgency to relocate many of these local endemic herbs from farms that are on the way out. This will include the saving of seeds, documenting the saved seeds, with taking propagation cuttings from these gardens. My aim is to document as many of these herbs and plants as possible. The documentation process will form the basis of our understanding of the local flora, thus allowing me to be able to transcribe the knowledge into a framework for the design of foodscapes. These seeds and plants will be sowed and scattered into the downtown core of Singapore to allow for these plants to bring up conversations, to allow the community to re-explore what they have lost touch with. This will form the basis of our seed bank, where we will create seed access and knowledge to the community. The intended output from this will be a series of curated workshops, art exhibitions, panel sessions, and conversations around the topic of seed sovereignty and food sovereignty. Finally, this will be open source and then will be spread around to regenerate surrounding spaces. The project will happen in a cluster of shopping malls, the crowning jewel of neoliberal age, Funan Shopping Mall and Raffles City, with sizable rooftop farm spaces located within the downtown core area of Singapore. The upsurge of interest in urban farming, with developers viewing it as part of a sustainability goal to push by commercial malls, has been in part motivated by well-established landscape replacement and food security policies driven from the top-down authoritarian state, but also seen as a marketing positioning move by these commercial developers to present themselves as environmentally conscious. One such way is to encapsulate the knowledge and seeds into a clay ball. This preserves and protects the seed until they are exposed to the actual environment where water is present, in a way creating a seed bank using natural materials. When exposed to water, these seed banks germinate and act as a receptacle for seedlings to grow. This method, better known as seed bombs, is a novel way to litter the landscape with useful and productive plants and can quickly populate the urban landscape to maintain and save a specific species of plants that can add value to the environment and the community. We looked at different materials, using charcoal as one of the receptacles to help with the germination and growth process of seeds. The opportunity for green productive spaces to also address that into aging is seen as a major trend within the urban food movement, as shared in a recent panel I moderated. And this is Sarah, Program Director from Capital Growth UK.
For community resilience, how important outdoor space and nature is now being recognised for our mental health. So, one of the things that suffered along with the obviously physical health elements, what's going on at the moment is the mental health situation, and how a lot of the evidence around connection with nature is really strong at the moment.
Horticulture activities cover a broad perspective ranging from all forms of exposure to nature and plants to a narrow focus on active engagement with plants. These activities have been shown to reduce depression, as the garden environment offers a respite from the urban setting. In addition, besides reducing negative mood, horticulture also brings about an increase in positive dimension. The primary research focus for the implementation of the restorative agrarian foodscape is to leverage upon the findings from topics explored on food sovereignty and the resurgence of indigenous plants knowledge. How do we empower the citizens through a decentralized food system can really simply be achieved through the use of local endemic herbs and vegetables. And really the hypothesis of the compounded benefits can be achieved as follows, creating productive longevity, physical and mental well-being, financial well-being, cohesion, and food security. This transfer of knowledge on healing plants to the pioneers post 50 years old through the seed bank knowledge and gain from Project One will act as an empowering tool for the target group and possibly address any cultural nuance. Within this canvas, I'll be able to collect more data that relates to the creation of restorative micro-landscape with soft fascination. These micro-landscape can become a source of micro-enterprises and provide micro-jobs around the district, introducing a new way to eat and consume, changing the ways the citizens think about their food, eating their way out of old habits and changing mindsets. If we can change this mindset, we can change the demand. And with the change in demand, we can change how agriculture takes place in the Southeast Asia region. The method framework will include the following measures of both quantitative and qualitative approaches to measure the effectiveness of the design of the restorative agrarian spaces against the following metrics, which will provide fresh insights using biological and medical methods as a basis of measuring the effectiveness of the design. The list of qualitative and quantitative methods and measurements are as follows. We're tracking the physical movement of participants, we're tracking nutritional outcomes, mental engagement, and also social and economic well-being assessments. The ultimate aim is to make Singapore an edible garden city for a landscape that is restorative and regenerative an effort that is a whole of society approach to creating a better food future for our city. Thank you for listening, and
Thank you very much for the presentation. It's been 8 years since our last meeting with CEO Bjorn. So seeds and plants list are documented linked to the seed bank, and that bank also creates urban jobs. So it was a really new innovative paradigm. Thank you very much for introducing us to the new paradigm. Now we'll move to the panel discussion session. Yesterday we had a pre-conference where we had touched upon the carbon neutrality, biodiversity, and sustainable food. We've invited the moderators of each session, Mr. Kim Jin-seok, Kim Sung-hoon, and Ms. Pickets. And we also invited Kim Chun-gi, CEO of Incheon Urban Agriculture Network, as well as Kobori Mutobu, CEO of Keynote International Korea. Before we move to the panel discussion session,
그럼 지금부터 2020 서울 도시농업 국제 컨퍼런스를 시작하겠습니다. 2020 서울 도시농업 국제 컨퍼런스는 서울시와 서울 도시농업이 함께 마련한 자리입니다. 11월 26일부터 27일까지 양일간 진행되는 이번 컨퍼런스는 갈수록 세계적 관심이 증대해지는 기후변화에 대응하고 코로나19 위기 상황에도 활동 가능한 도시농업의 역할에 대해 논의를 하고자 준비한 자리입니다. 좋은 내용의 강의를 들려주신 발표자분들과 오랜 시간 경청해 주시고 참여해 주신 참가자 여러분들께 감사 말씀 드립니다. 감사합니다.
So at yesterday's pre-conference, 3 different topics of carbon neutrality, biodiversity, and sustainable food were discussed by a number of speakers from home and abroad. And the topic of the discussion today is climate farmers saving the city and the earth. So we've invited the moderators of yesterday's sessions. I'd like to ask the panelists to provide their opinions for the topic of today. There's going to be a summary provided by the moderators of yesterday's session, and we'll also listen to the opinions of Mr. Kim Chun-gi, CEO of Incheon Urban Agriculture Network, and Kobori Mutobu, CEO of Keynote International Korea. And we will also ask the panelists to provide their comments on the presentations delivered today. So, Mr. Kim Jin-seok moderated the carbon neutrality session. Please provide your comment on the session yesterday. Hello everyone, I'm Kim Jin-seok. I moderated the session on carbon neutrality. Dr. Nadia from the Netherlands talked about the trees, soil, and biodiversity data management using IoT. New York City Park Director Greensam talked about the 550 community gardens, which is used for promoting urban farming. So she talked about the Green Summit activity. The third speaker was from Make Soil, CEO Josh Hitton. There is a landfill issue that urban areas have to deal with. It is critical that organic matters are not entering the landfill. It should be made into a compost and should be used as fertilizer. Also, we had a Korean professor, and he talked about treating food waste at the point of pollution. So as we were having the discussion in session number 1, listening to the presentation made by speakers from home and abroad, the urban farming is about utilizing, of course, the green spaces to absorb CO2 emissions, but at the same time, there are a lot of organic matters that will be recirculated to prevent CO2 emissions. So that's the importance of urban farming. And that is the role of urban farmers. So that was the brief summary of session number 1 yesterday. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your detailed explanation. Now, I'd like to invite the second session moderator, Mr. Kim Seung-hun. Before you summarize the second session, so we received Michael Maunder's video at the last minute. Would you please summarize the video and then summarize the session as a whole? I am Kim Seung-hun. I'm an urban environment architect. Michael Maunder sent his video. It was about natural cycle of urban agriculture and the use of energy. So his lecture delved into these topics in detail. And also he highlighted that the cities only account for 3% of the planet, but these cities consume energy, 70 to 80% of energy produced on the earth. So in that regard, urban agriculture can be a new weapon to revive the ecosystem across the globe. In Korea, we have a traditional culture of making kimchi for the winter time. And also there are many cultural assets, and his video highlighted those impressive aspects of Korean culture. Regarding the third session, Mr. Park, would you please summarize it?
Hello everyone, my name is Pickets. So I moderated the third session. The conference today is about how we respond to climate change, how we slow down or stabilize climate change. And one way is to become urban farmers ourselves to be able to realize climate economies. So in the third session yesterday, we had discussions on sustainable food, and there were 3 cases presented. In the case of Nerima City, Japan, to achieve sustainability of urban farming, they used Nerima produce for school meal service and cafeterias, and there is a farmers market organized. So urban farming is connected to local food. As we're living in the era of climate change, sustainability can be achieved by urban farming, and quality of life can be ensured by urban farming as well. The case of Rosen, Switzerland, was interesting. It has a population of 100,000 people, and they've been thinking about how they can realize the sustainable food system. From balcony to farm was the main slogan, of their urban farming initiative. Last but not least, in Korea, there is a food flexibility and diet flexibility that were presented as new concept. There was a community supporting farming. Of course, urban farming can produce food for urban areas, but it is also critical to connect farmers from the urban areas and rural areas. And all the relevant activities can be regarded as urban farming. So that was a summary of session number 3.
Thank you, Ms. Beck, for your excellent summary. Yesterday at the pre-conference, we covered carbon neutral biodiversity sustainable food system under the topic of urban agriculture. So there were heated discussions on the roles and values of urban agriculture. And today, at the main session, we had many discussions on many topics, especially the social value of urban agriculture and urban agriculture as one strategy. And also, as Ms. Seung-yeon presented, we talked about the designs in terms of urban agriculture. So now we have Mr. Kim Chung-gi, Incheon Urban Agriculture Network CEO, and Kobori Bomotu, K2 International CEO, are here. Would you please give your comments on the presentations made today? First, Mr. Kim. Hello, I am Kim Chung-gi, Incheon Urban Agriculture Network CEO. Under the grand topic of urban climate farmer, we discussed biodiversity and carbon neutral, as we did yesterday. As a social farmer, I'd like to mention that the agricultural values should be realized for the good of society. That's the purpose of urban agriculture. The most values of urban agriculture come from the process of urban agriculture rather than from the products and produce of urban agriculture. While you're participating in urban agriculture, you can reap many values. So reviving urban community, helping care for the elderly and children, and education. In these aspects, urban agriculture is very important. There's a new term called social agriculture. I think that actually helped us coin better terms to better express the concepts. So we need to utilize the agriculture in terms of social activities. So from the perspectives of urban agriculture, how can we participate in creating social values? So we need to think about this. In the current urban agriculture, they are centered on the programs. So they passively just participate in the programs. But we need to look at this in terms of realizing social values together. So we need to look for the urban farmers, and we need to work together with them. The best way is to center on community. So we need to think about how to support these communities to realize the values. Earlier in the urban beekeeping, the speaker talked about design. So I think we need to create more a friendly environment for social activities.
So the social farming benefits related to or can be obtained from the participation, but we also have to understand the role that social farmers or urban farmers can play. We also have a very special guest that is none other than Kobori Motomu, CEO of K2 International Korea. He's of course from Japan, spent 8 years in Korea, and was engaged in various social activities. He's also heading a social enterprise and has been engaged in various urban farming activities. So please share with us your comment on Seoul urban farming. Thank you very much. I'm Kobori Motomu, CEO of K2 International Korea. I'm not an expert of social or urban farming. For young people who spend most of theirs at home, I've been running a program to help them. I've been living with Korean young people in a shared house. I received support from the Seoul city government years ago and started my very small, tiny rooftop garden, which is still continuing on the rooftop of the share house that I'm still residing in. There are about 15 mates who are sharing the house. We grow vegetables. We organize monthly parties, invite our neighbors, and we sometimes cook together. Young people that we interact with are somehow isolated from the rest of the society. I've been always thinking about what will be the most needed by them. I thought that they really need a community. Because of COVID-19, I understand that unemployment rate is going up, further isolating young active people. By promoting urban farming, maybe we can also revitalize our communities. What's impressive about today's presentations was in urban setting, as we are living in a mega city where we rarely interact with our neighbors, maybe urban farming can help us to create a society where we could all live together as a member of our community.
Thank you very much for your comment. Living in Korea as a foreigner, he's working for those people who are completely isolated from society, and he's making great values. I think he's doing very meaningful jobs in Korea. It's a very courageous job. I would like to root for you continuously. Regarding the session 2, Mr. Kim Sung-hoon only summarized Michael Maunder's video. Can I ask Mr. Kim to summarize the session? Yes, and the session 2, Mr. Liu Mugong-tae, the representative of IBPC. It is the International Biodiversity Property Council. So this organization applies the concept of biodiversity to buildings. When you think about biodiversity, you think about the variety of species and green architecture. In particular, the IBPC actively reflects the biodiversity not only to the city but also to buildings in response to climate change. So he gave good presentation about it. And in the third session, Mr. Park Se-hyun from LH Project made a presentation about the 2 LH projects regarding urban agriculture. The first project is about creating patch fields in the idle land. And it also creates some spaces for community, and it also helps increasing the health of the people in the city. And also the second project is about the rooftop gardening. So on the rooftop, you create little gardens and also create green walls in order to build beautiful buildings in the cities. So we had 3 speakers talking about biodiversity. The biodiversity concept is not something far away from us, and it is reflected in the lives of people in the city. They made such great presentations. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your kind summary of section number 2. We are getting a lot of questions from the online participants. We will select a few, maybe 3 of them, and try to get some answers. So first question is, agriculture-related agencies believe that urban farmers are taking the rural farmers' jobs. What should be the proper response to such awareness or perception? There have been a lot of concerns, and these concerns are still continuing. We started our activities to promote urban farming so that more people will participate, but it looks like apparently urban people growing their own food, and some are concerned that this will undermine the agricultural business of rural farmers, and the support that are supposed to go and benefit rural farmers may be taken away by urban farmers. Of course, urban farming shouldn't be just focused on producing food in urban settings, but there are social values. It should also be considered to have other social benefits, one including the improving people's perception toward the environment. I think it is critical that we also increase our communication with rural farmers as well.
Thank you very much. The question was given suddenly, but he gave good answer. Second question is, urban farmers produce food for people in city. What are the biggest concerns of them? Professor Peck, would you please answer? We have concerns about sustainable food system. People living in cities should have the mindset that they are the common producers with rural farmers. But urban food system doesn't just remain sustainable because it is connected to the activities in rural areas. People move, go to and from between Seoul, the cities, and rural communities. So we need to create a bigger and better sustainable system. In order to address this issue, the communities support agriculture where consumers participate. And we need to create that. And also we need to enact laws and enforcement decrees on this topic. As we are participating in this conference, we need to work together on addressing these topics and concerns together. Thank you, Professor Peck. It was a very difficult question, but you gave a really good answer.
So we'll try to answer another question. Maybe this is an ongoing challenge of urban farming. What should be the best way to revitalize rural farming? So, Mr. Kim Jin-duk, I think this is related to the question number 1. I'd like to encourage all of us to look further ahead, because one of the most urgent challenges that we have to tackle is the collapse of rural communities and reduction of rural population. If there is no agricultural activities happening in rural areas, weakening the foundation of our agriculture. We will have a dire future. So it is critical that we nurture more number of people who will be engaged in farming activities. There is an estimation that there is 2.4 urban farmers in Korea. Sometimes they start this activity as a small hobby, but as they improve their understanding on the farming and what it's like to be engaged in farming, then we'll be able to encourage in establishment of a urban and farmer network, and they will make significant contribution to producing food. Then there will come a day when urban and rural farming is converged and force us to think about the common ways to survive together. So it is critical to nurture future farmers, and they should be actively engaged to revive farming activities both in urban settings and rural areas. Then the concerns held by rural farmers will be dispelled, I think.
Thank you very much. Lastly, we are going to ask questions to our panelists. Today's conference and the entire conference yesterday and today, they're all about climate farmers, their roles, their mindset. We talked about that. Carbon neutral, biodiversity, sustainable food system were the topics to discuss that issue. Now, what is our future ways ahead as a climate farmers? What are the tasks that our urban farmers should do? Would you please make a comment regarding this topic? First, Mr. Kim Jin-duk, would you please comment? Regarding carbon neutral, resources cycle was highlighted. In this context, the role of urban agriculture is to instill the climate sensitivity in the minds of citizens. Citizens become sensitive to climate change. So without that, no matter how good policies you present, it will be very hard to translate those policies into action. Not only producing, but also marketing, distributing, and consuming. And after consumption, the wastes are created. So all these waste should go back to the land. It should be recycled back into the land. So based on the understanding of climate, we can do this. The Seoul city is trying to nurture 1 million urban farmers. That means 1 million climate activists are working in Seoul. So in my presentation, I mentioned Greensome case. So within 10 minutes distance, there are urban agriculture sites. So we need to think about how to create those sites. And regarding Make Soil project, we have a map that shows the sites where you can make fertilizers. So urban farmers' activities now should be indicated on the global map. That way we can increase solidarity among urban farmers. And also we can know what countries are doing, in what countries and what kind of activities our urban farmers are doing. So there are agricultural policies, but it seems like the importance of urban agriculture is underestimated. So the role of urban farmer is very important. So in that regard, FAO's role is important. Mr. Mark Levenston made a keynote speech, and he also highlighted that active solidarity activities connecting urban farmers across the globe is very important. That way we can create mainstream trends regarding urban farming.
So, global mapping of urban farming activities and urban farming activities should be upgraded to the level that can be matched of activities happening at other countries. And Mr. Kim Sang-un, your comments please, as was just mentioned by Mr. Kim Jin-da. I agree with you, of course, not just citizens, but policymakers and people like me, architects, must have the sense of urgency and participate more actively. Since I'm an architect, from the perspective of architecture, I will do what I have to do as an architect to reflect the architectural aspect for social farming and urban farming. So I've been thinking about the possible solutions myself. In the session that I moderated, there was a representative of Land and Housing Corporation, and he said there are so many idle spaces of public buildings in Korea. Unlike European countries, in Korea, we have a lot of ample spaces on rooftops where we can use for preserving biodiversity and for urban farming. So utilizing such idle spaces will be really helpful to revive our communities. It will also helpful to restore communities in our society. Our city has been marked with gray concrete buildings, but utilizing such spaces will be really useful for preservation of biodiversity in the city. So you shared your perspective as an architect and shared with us how we can identify and create new idle spaces in our urban settings for urban farming. So Mr. Kim Chung-gi?
My comment is also in line with what was said so far. Carbon farming, it should be actually practiced. Many urban farmers are trying to organically produce agricultural products. When we give training, we highlight this. You need to create fertilizers to revive land. So centering on carbon, you need to think about how to turn your ideas into action. Recently, I watched a video titled Kiss the Ground. It's a documentary movie. It is about carbon agriculture and reviving agriculture. The message is that when you combine the carbons on the surface and in the air, the amount is less than what is absorbed and buried under the land. So by changing the agricultural methods, you can put the oxygen from the air into the land. So organic farming is not just for myself, it's for everybody and the community and everyone's health as a whole. So in this context, the biggest the biggest victims of climate change is our children. So urban farming should be for our next generation. So without that, people will not feel the threat of climate change. So urban farming should practice their farming activities for our future generation.
So carbon farming is something new that we will have to continue to understand. Maybe that will be really useful for our future generation. So it's really impressive. Now let us turn to Mr. Kobori Motomu. So what will be some of the practices that we can really do for our everyday life in the context of urban farming? Of course, I will have to keep learning. One of the easiest ways to build a connection with local community is urban farming, I guess. Rooftop gardens and balcony gardens can be a small step, important steps, and those should be recognized in our society as something valuable. Thank you very much. Since you're engaged in local activities, maybe urban farming or the value of it can be found in its benefit to the local community. And that's why we have greater role played by urban farmers.
Lastly, Ms. Pekesu, our main keywords for this conference is climate farmer, and this term was coined by Ms. Pekesu. Would you please give your comment? Climate farmer project should be practiced as an action plan. So each city in the world should practice it. And in the next year conference, we should share our experiences together. Why don't we make that promise? In the process of doing that, in the post-COVID-19 era, we need evolved community. So in that sense, I would like to suggest that we need to turn climate farmer project into an action plan. In Seoul, in December, we are going to begin the seed sharing project, and we have 400 communities in Seoul, and the number of the community will be expanded to 100 as part of the project. So we all need to work together to carry out the climate farmer project, and it will be our better response to climate change. Thank you.
So you shared with us your big picture. So it shouldn't just be a rhetoric. So the activities itself and the administrational activities must be all combined to promote urban farming. Of course, we had discussions on sustainable food, biodiversity, and carbon neutrality. And yesterday, the role of urban farmers and the social value of urban farming. Today, and the importance of urban farming as a national strategy. And it could also create jobs in urban settings. So all in all, what we can say is that it is maybe time for us to change the role of urban farmers. They do not or should not remain as farmers in their neighborhood or community. Rather, their roles should be expanded so that it can also contribute to curbing climate change, which was all suggested by the participants of today's conference. We were preparing for organizing this year's event alongside with the Global Farmers Conference. But eventually, because of COVID-19, we had to organize this year's event remotely or virtually. I hope that today's event will lead to strengthening of the Global Farmers Network. With that, we'll conclude Seoul International Conference on Urban Agriculture 2020 that took place for 2 days, yesterday and today. So how do we define the urban or climate farmers? They're the ones who are practicing urban farming in urban settings who contribute to preservation of biodiversity and establishment of sustainable food systems. So all those who are making contribution to those ends can be called as climate farmers. So I'd like to ask you to join us in our efforts of becoming climate farmers ourselves. With that, we will conclude Seoul International Conference on Urban Agriculture 2020. I'd like to thank all the speakers, panelists, as well as online participants for your kind contribution for this year's conference. Thank you very much.